Hello, hello, and welcome to Mapping the College Audition. I'm your host, Charlie Murphy, director of MTCA. That's Musical Theater College Auditions. Check us out at mtca.com. And today we've got Molly Griggs on the show, an MTCA alumni and successful artist out there in the world. And for our newer listeners, these artist exploration episodes, we try to explore the paths to success that artists have forged and are still forging in Molly's case, and tease out how their theatrical training helped them to blaze that trail. And I will say we do a bit too much excited bragging on this episode, from chatting through our successful MTCA alumni to then it was just Molly and me naming a bunch of successful Carnegie Mellon alumni and talking about the different paths of actors and MTs and all those things. But that just happens when you get two Carnegie Mellon alumni in a room to talk to each other. We're going to start bragging a bit. It is the law. But we do have a really wonderful conversation about Molly's process in general. We got into some really good acting and auditioning tips that I think really could apply to all. So I think this episode's likely helpful for young actors of almost any age, whether you're looking at colleges or you're out in the world already. I will say, I know we're back to overrepresenting Carnegie Mellon a bit on the podcast. My apologies for that. I tried really hard early on, especially to try to keep the schools balanced and then keep the artists balanced within the schools that they went to. But just in the busy schedule of scheduling these artists, we do have moments where we overrepresent. And we're about to have another CMU guest on again in the next few weeks, and another one that we're scheduling with after that. So I just hear you. Yes, we're overrepresenting, and I apologize. And also, go Tartans. Yeah. But I do hope things are going well with all of you as we kind of wrap up our Octobers. We had about as crazy a month as you can have over here, with a really busy MTCA life. And then Elizabeth was singing a big solo concert or a duet concert at Carnegie Hall, which meant we had a lot of family coming in. And oh my, it was just a lot. But we made it through. And we're looking forward to Halloween coming this week. For those of you who are interested, Solvay is going as a butterfly, and Elizabeth and I are going as milk thistle, which apparently butterflies like. I don't know. And then we're really looking forward to some of these end-of-year holidays as well. By the time we get to Halloween, it feels like we're basically at Christmas. We get like Halloween, and then Thanksgiving, and then Christmas. We're almost the way through it. And as we look into the end of the year and into the next, one of the reasons I was thinking about that, our MTCA families will have seen that all of our private audition information is in the process of being released to you as we speak. So, as you're listening to this episode in the next week, you're going to be getting basically all of that information available for you to sign up for. We are so excited to be able to release that to you all. And I hope you were all able to stay tuned to your inbox and get those signups immediately. And we really thank all of you for your patience as we're getting that information out. With those we knew, especially releasing them a bit later, we knew they're going to fill up fast. And oh boy, did they fill up quickly. So please, for those of you who are just hearing about this, who maybe weren't tuned to your inbox, please do engage with those wait lists if that's something you're interested in. We always go to our wait lists to some extent and sometimes to a really large extent. So it's absolutely worth placing yourself on one of those wait lists, whether that's for an individual school or for our private audition weekend in December, and really for all of our events, whether that's a mock audition, whatever it is. We've had a lot of wait list movement this year, particularly. Which it's probably a good reminder for all of you. If you're not signed up for a mock yet, please do make sure you sign up for one. We're going to be doing 3 in the next 3 weeks. So 1 in New York City, then 1 in Chicago, and then 2 in LA. We're doing our little pre-Unifieds tour warm-up, which we love doing. But then again, back in New York City in December and January, as well as 1 online in January. So make sure you sign up for one before those fill. Those will all fill up. All right. Shall we get to it? Here is the wonderful Molly Griggs. Well, we are so excited to be joined by Molly Griggs. Molly has a BFA in musical theater from Carnegie Mellon. She's in The Residence, Succession, Servant, Dr. Death, a lot of ominous TV and film credits there. Also on Broadway in Hello, Dolly, and John Proctor is the villain. Molly, welcome on the show. How are you feeling today?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. This is cool.
You are so welcome. And I can't believe it. In the bio, I've already messed up. I missed the most important part of it, which is, of course, that you are an MTCA alumni. That should have been the top of it, is MTCA alumni class of 2012.
That's the headline for
That's
sure.
It. It's like John Proctor, then Succession. Well, you can put in whatever order, and then MTCA. That's got to be the top.
Exactly.
But you're now joining the ranks of many of our successful MTCA alum who've joined the pod. We recently had Helen Chen on, Talia Suskower, Ali Louise Borsky, who just today saw he's doing his next Broadway show. It's very exciting to see all the success of all of you.
Oh, I didn't even know those guys did MTCA. That's so cool.
Now you do. That's why I'm saying it
Now
to
I
you and
do.
for our listeners, just so we can brag about all of our amazing alum. It's so exciting.
That's so
And
cool.
also we were saying in the pre-show, it's like I say a young alum. Some of those names are pretty young. Helen is right out of school, but like we're getting into our 30s now. It's very weird that we have MTCA alumni who are full adults themselves.
I know. We were saying before we went on that I graduated high school in 2012 and then graduated Carnegie Mellon in 2016, which is to me feels like it just happened. I still feel
Yesterday.
like a baby in the industry. So,
But your 10-year
um,
reunion is
but
tomorrow,
it's like
basically.
next year. I know. So it's very exciting.
We're going to attempt, old though we admit that you are, we're going to attempt to take you through this audition gauntlet and take you back to when you were 16, 17 and first started thinking
Okay.
about this. Before we do like the full college gauntlet, can you just give our listeners like a little 60-second catch up on like Molly up to 16 or Molly up to 17, up to that point when you first started thinking maybe, hey, I'm really going to start thinking about college, where you grew up, how you discovered theater. Give us a little bit of your own background.
Yeah, I grew up in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and there was some theater stuff happening in grade school, but the majority of my experience and education came from actually working in local theaters.
Mm-hmm.
There was this theater called Caver Regional Theater in my town, so I did like 4 or 5 plays a year there,
Mm-hmm.
which is a lot actually. So I just had a ton of reps
Meaning
doing
also
stuff.
you're also doing high school theater, or you're doing
No,
professional and high
my
school, or mostly professional?
no high school theater at all.
Interesting.
Because my high school just didn't really have the infrastructure. So
Yeah.
I was like doing that. And then I was sort of driving, I had to drive kind of far to take dance class.
Mm-hmm.
And I took some acting classes in Raleigh, which is like an hour and 15 minutes from where I lived.
Yep.
So it was a lot of like my sweet parents and me when I got a driver's license
Mm-hmm.
driving back and forth a lot. So it was kind of because I don't come, Fayetteville, North Carolina is like a great place for sure, but it's not New York or LA or
Totally.
Florida where these big markets are for like training young kids. So we kind of had to figure it out.
Yeah, it's so interesting. It's kind of indicative of some of the differences between, I'll say, your generation of students, which is really you can market it pre-COVID, but I don't know that it's all COVID. It's also just just 10 years ago or whatever. Your generation of students were totally those kids who would go, I'm going to drive an hour and a half in to take that dance class. I mean, I remember people would take the train 2 hours in from New Jersey to do coaching. Now the accessibility of Zoom, of course, means you have access to the whole world all the time, across the globe. But in some
Totally.
ways, I go, is that almost a loss because you don't have to get in your car and sweat for it a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, well, I think it does. I think what's great about Zoom is it does make it more accessible for people because,
Yeah,
I came from a situation where I had really supportive parents who were able
yeah,
to give me time and resources to be able to go and do this stuff. So I think that there is something very cool about it being something you can do from home and you can do
yeah,
it right after school.
yeah.
So but there is something to, I felt like I had to grow up a little bit fast because I was like,
Sure.
here I go. I'm 16 years old. I'm driving myself 3 hours round
Yeah.
trip
No,
to
that's the difference.
go.
There's the age. It feels like those 16-year-olds felt older in some ways because of the
Sure.
amount of responsibility they would shoulder. And we'll talk maybe a little bit about the convenience versus the upsides and downsides of self-tapes, as we have some self-tape questions for you later in the
Of
thing. But I'm already
course.
derailing our gauntlet here. So now
Okay.
you're
Okay.
16, 17, you're doing this professional theater, you're now looking at colleges. Can you just talk to me a little bit about like what were you thinking about when you sat down for an MTCA initial consult, or maybe before this, you started looking at like what your list was going to look like? What did you think you wanted in a theater school? I have the list what we actually had from, it's got 9 schools that you brought into your initial consult. But
Oh, you have that list?
yeah, I got Juilliard, CMU, Emerson, Michigan, Syracuse. Anyway, I've got like 9 schools.
And I think that's where I applied.
It was
Um,
those 9. Yeah.
I think it was those 9. Yeah.
Yeah.
I should say first that the way that I found MTCA was there was one of y'all's teachers, Ren McLemore,
Yep.
was in my hometown doing a play,
Yep.
and I met her,
Yep.
and I was like, I found out she went to Carnegie Mellon.
Yep.
And I had heard about that school and I was like, how do I do that? And she was like, well, I work for this company called MTCA where like we can kind of help you find your way through this. So I very organically came across
This is
y'all,
the
which
old days,
is
Molly. This is when people used to be a secret gem that you had to find out
it
about us through your secret ways. And now
totally,
we're
it
like
was
out there with
just
marketing,
word
but
of
yeah.
mouth and just kind of like meeting people. So it was just by chance that I met her.
Yeah.
And so
She
she sort
guaranteed
of,
Carnegie Mellon to you. She said, "I can get you
she
into Carnegie
said,
Mellon
I'm
for
going to
nothing."
call Mr. Carnegie Mellon,
Mr. Mellon, yeah.
Mr.
Long dead,
Mellon,
yeah.
and get you in there. No, she didn't. But she was like, um, she did do one thing that was very important for me, is that she did tell me, she was like, you belong in a school like that.
Mhm.
She told me,
Mhm.
you belong in a great school.
Mm.
And even just that little nugget, I carried it around like a little precious gem that I'm just like, this person who I think is awesome and so talented thinks I am awesome and
Yep.
talented. So that really bolstered me to be like, you know what? I'm going to audition for Juilliard. I'm going to
Oh, yeah.
audition for Michigan and for Carnegie Mellon, for these places that are like really, I don't know, that I maybe wouldn't have necessarily felt like I could have gotten into.
Yep, I love it. This reminds me so much of the conversation we had with one of our coaches, Lacey Jordan, who talked about that idea of like, it's so hard to give that to yourself, to give yourself that self-belief, which I tell our listeners, like, even if you're not an MTCA student, even if you don't have help doing this, like, you need to find that for yourself. The like, I belong in this room, I belong at one of those places. At 17, that's really hard to just generate from yourself. It helps having someone go, I see you.
I
It's,
see
I
you
validate you. Yeah.
totally. And I think why I really responded to Rin in particular is that like I think that she was responding to what was unique and strange about me as a actor.
Yeah.
And she wasn't trying to be like, hey, you should do it like this and then they will like you more. She was very like, you need to bring yourself and your idiosyncrasies
Yeah.
to these characters and so that they can meet you.
Yep. And it helps
Um,
having someone who themselves was not so she's probably about your age as you are now when she was doing that with
she
you.
was she was
Yeah.
like she was like 30. Yeah,
Yeah. And
exactly.
so like someone who's not that far removed from that experience themselves, who has their own quirks and not, Rin is not identical to you, but similar enough in those ways to go,
Totally.
someone
We could be
recognizes in me, I
sisters.
see it in you. Yeah,
Yeah,
totally. Okay,
absolutely.
so you believe in yourself. You got this ambitious list, and it seems like you're going. You went for musical theater schools. You looked at Juilliard, a couple other. I thought UNCSA was on there, a couple acting schools. But it seemed like you maybe knew you wanted a really strong acting program
That was the
that had
thing.
also musical theater.
Yeah, and I realized this particularly while I was auditioning, um, that the schools that were more of an acting focus,
Yeah,
I had a better experience in the audition room. I
yeah,
think I got better feedback from the faculty, and even when I got into Carnegie Mellon, because they consider you for both
yeah.
when you audition, they called me and they were like, you may be happier in the acting
Hmm.
program, but we'd like you to be in the musical theater program.
Yeah,
And for
because no
that
one needs to be
school,
unhappy.
because they wanted me to be miserable.
Yeah, yeah.
No,
That's
okay.
okay.
No, but they were very, very thoughtful in that way to be like,
Totally.
how am I going to have the best experience?
Yeah. Well, and
Um,
we talk about the permeable membrane between those two things in the professional world. You're somebody who's you really your career when you read it back, you go, this looks like an actor who sings. I mean, this looks like you're
right.
in a Broadway musical, amazing, but also on a Broadway play and in a lot of TV and film. So, like in terms of your career, it's both. It really is both.
It is, yeah. I haven't done a ton of musical theater since graduating, and I would love to do more. Like, listen, I'm out here, I'm auditioning, I'm
Oh yeah,
banging on the door. I'm not, I
hello
haven't,
Molly. You keep doing that. Yeah,
yeah, absolutely. So, but I did know that, like, I think my way into any project, regardless of the medium, is going
yeah.
to be
As an
acting and
actor.
character focused. So, yeah.
Not unlike our Rin, who also is a musical theater person. So beautiful.
Yes,
Yeah, so many ways you're similar.
exactly.
Okay, so talk me through how well do you remember now going through the college process? So you only have to give us anecdotes that you actually remember. I know it's been a while, but like do you remember stuff like which unifieds you did? Did you do a
Yes.
unified? Do you remember were you doing a lot of Skype coaching alongside the live work? Like, do you remember the application process? Talk to me through like what you remember from your senior year. This should have been before pre-screens, right? You wouldn't have done pre-screens.
I didn't pre-screen.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
right before. Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember I had my list. I was 9, and I remember I applied early to Emerson.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think I got into Emerson.
Mm-hmm.
And so that
Early
was
action, but not early
early
decision.
early action, but not early decision. And that was such a positive experience. I loved that school. I thought it was so cool. And it was this thing of like, okay, I am going to college.
Yep.
And it gave me a lot of peace of mind for the rest of the way.
Yep.
I went to Chicago Unifieds, and I think I did like Ithaca
Mm-hmm.
there and Syracuse there.
Mm-hmm.
But I went to Pittsburgh for Carnegie
Yep.
Mellon. I did that in Pittsburgh. Um, I went to New York for
Yep.
Juilliard.
I imagine you may have
Uh,
done Michigan also while you're at Chicago Unifieds.
no, I did Michigan in person. I went to
I mean,
Michigan.
popped over? No, it wasn't a single
Yeah,
trip.
I can't remember if we did it in one trip.
Tough to know.
Yeah, I
These
remember.
are details that are now truly above your pay grade to remember 10 years later.
I can't remember. But yeah, I do remember. I went to Ann Arbor
Yep.
for the Michigan audition.
Yep.
I don't know. I had it in my head. I don't think this is true at all, but I had it in my head for the ones that I was like really, really, really excited for. I wanted to be in person. Like I went to Emerson in person.
Totally.
Um, Again, this was my really wonderful, supportive parents,
Yep.
like
Well,
putting
and
my
also the
butt on a
fact that
flight.
your list was 9 schools long, maybe aided by the fact that Emerson was an early yes, helped you go, okay, I've got the buttress there. I know I'm getting somewhere. You didn't have to expand the list too much beyond that. But also, it does allow for more conscious planning of I'm going to go to this and this and this, as opposed to, a lot of our students now are doing 20 schools. It's
What?
a whole different level. I know, Molly. It's a different time. It's a different time these days.
20?
There's pre-screens, Molly. It's a different world than it used to be. Can you
Oh, I
believe it?
see. You can cast a wider net because you're gonna
You,
do your
you send
tape
the
at home.
pre-screens in. You might get some no's, and then you're scheduling. The whole process has shifted since the
Wow.
pre-screen, and then certainly since COVID in a lot of ways. But
Yeah.
let's talk about. Did you feel like, and maybe this wasn't high on your list, but did you feel like you cared about the academics of it all? I mean, I'm just looking at some of these schools. When you look at Juilliard and Carnegie Mellon, which are really conservatory style, versus Emerson and Michigan, which have way more academics there. Was that a factor? Did that matter to you? Or were you just like, I'm looking for good programs? And I remember seeing, I looked at your thing, you have like a 4.9 GPA in school or some crazy thing.
Did
Um,
I
so
really?
whatever we have written down was pretty good. It may not be 4.9, but it was good.
I feel
What
like
was the academics of it all?
I was like fine in school. I wasn't like great.
Well,
Um,
I'm going to read this into the record as you say fine in school. I'm going to
it was
find it.
fine.
I'm looking.
I don't I never I have no great love for being in math class.
Uh-huh.
And so yeah, I knew I wanted a rigorous, serious program.
Mm-hmm.
And of course that doesn't only mean a conservatory. Like
Yep.
there like Michigan is extremely rigorous and very cool, and had amazing people that I admired came out of that program.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, I wasn't really, it was like, oh, if I have to take gen eds, okay, I
Right.
can do it.
That
It'll
wasn't
be
the goal.
worth it to go to a cool
To a
school.
Michigan or an Emerson.
Um,
4.95 is what you reported to us, Mally. Maybe now we're just discovering 10 years later you lied to us, but
4.95.
that's your
Can
weighted
you
GPA.
have a 4? Oh, it's weighted. I was like, can it be
Weighted,
above a
unweighted is
4?
3.95, but that's
Oh yeah,
about as good as it can get.
because I took some APs. That's
Of
why.
course you did. I know. And the SAT, you'd be test optional, Molly. That would not be. Your SAT would not be submitted alongside that form. I won't read that into the record for your sake.
No,
I'm
I'm not good at tests. Like
But
I remember
4.95, you're doing great.
my ACT. I'm good at like my teachers liked me.
Your teachers liked you, so that's good. Once you this is all makes sense. I love it. Okay, what about if you just kind of look back on yourself in the process, and again, you don't have to remember all the details, and it's been a while, but do you remember like was there something you felt like you did really well? Obviously, you had success. I don't have recorded here all of the options of where you landed between, but you got into a fantastic school in Carnegie Mellon. I imagine it wasn't Emerson. You mentioned it wasn't the only school you got into. Um, what do you think you did really well? Is there anything that if you go back and go, I could have done this better? But let's start off with just like, what do you think you really nailed? Why do you think you did so well in the process?
um, I don't know where this really comes from, but I guess I felt just like I'm gonna risk it for the biscuit. Like I
Hmm.
just really went for it, and I chose material that I really liked
Hmm.
and that I was excited to do a bunch of times.
Was that material, when you say risk it for the biscuit, is that just in the artistic work you're doing in the room, or was it actually like, hey, this material even was a bit of a challenge or a risk or
The
a
material was
whatever?
challenging, and I knew like it's hard to keep my interest in
Hmm.
something if I don't have that feeling of, am I going to be able to do this today?
Uh-huh.
Like actually have a little bit of risk of
Yep.
this is a challenge. Like this is something that like is going to require my full cylinders to be firing.
Yep.
Um, that made it interesting to me. That made it feel, I don't know, I had like a little extra adrenaline because of that.
Yep.
And I also knew, like, okay, this is challenging material. If I can pull this off,
Hmm.
it's going to be cool and they're going to
Yeah.
be into it.
They're not seeing this all day. They're not seeing
Right.
you
I
jumping
didn't
up.
want to choose safe material. Like
And
I
can you just
remember,
help
yeah,
define what does, for someone who's maybe not an actor, what does, or either a beginning actor for the students, but I also think for the parents of like, what does risk mean? Like, because sometimes we'll talk about like, is a piece vocally out of your range might feel like, well, that's a bit of a risk. That's a little bit difficult or challenging, in terms of,
sure.
so I guess, what do you mean when you say, I don't think that's what you mean when you say risk, but what do you mean when it felt like risky for you? You weren't sure you were going to be able to pull it off. Like what, if you remember, you can tell me specific to your pieces or just try to define like, what does that mean? An artistic risk for you?
Well, I guess I can give you an example. So my main song that I sang, it's all on a D or it's a C
Hmm.
sharp or something. And that's like a perfect little spot for me.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. If I am not emotionally, if I'm not in my body, if I'm not emotionally available and open, I actually can't sing it. So it was this challenge of like, am I going to be vulnerable enough to sing
Hmm.
this well? And also for my monologues, I remember they were emotionally rangy and they required a lot of vulnerability and they
Yeah.
required a lot of embarrassment.
Yeah.
I think that's like a thing that, like, if you're not willing to be foolish looking,
Mm. Mm.
like it's gonna be hard to do this job
Yeah.
forever, because it's embarrassing. It's an embarrassing job to
It's so,
have to do what we do.
I'm not used to that word embarrassing. I think I use the word vulnerable a lot, but I know exactly what you mean. And the like, I mean, as you can tell, of course, we have the same training in many different ways, but like that was my last takeaway is I do feel like so many students today are so afraid of being cringe that they're like not willing to take that risk. They're not willing to really, like, God forbid it be cheesy. And I'm like,
Oh,
some great art like really goes on that borderline of being that way.
it
You don't want it to
does.
be cheesy, but you have to take the risk of looking cheesy, looking cringe, looking embarrassed to take that, to really achieve the highest level of art.
Absolutely. And I guess I would challenge that too, just being like, if you're as an actor worried about being cringe, like I want you to think about the performances that you love
Mm-hmm.
and the actors that you love,
Mm-hmm.
or and then ask yourself, like, do you think they're like a little cringe, and does that
Mm-hmm.
make you actually feel seen
Mm-hmm.
because they are doing something that feels like, that's why we don't like cringe, because we're like, oh gosh, is that me?
Make me feel
You
things.
know,
Yeah, yeah. Yep.
it's making me feel things. It's uncomfortable, and I just think that great art does make you a little bit uncomfortable.
Could not agree more. Obviously very successful, but any big lessons from the process and stuff you would go back and change if you could, if you had to redo the process in that actor's nightmare of you're going back and auditioning for schools again, is there anything you go, I would do this differently than how I did it?
Oh, it's so hard to say. I don't know. I actually do think that I think it went I think it went well. And
Yeah.
so it's hard to be like, oh, I would change this and that. And I really do feel like I ended up where I was meant to be.
Do you remember those last couple choices? Was it between CMU and Emerson? Were there other choices that came in along the way? You don't have to give us
Yeah,
all your results, but do you remember what sort of
I,
what your final
yeah.
was?
It came down to I think it was between Carnegie Mellon and University of North Carolina School of the
Hmm.
Arts.
Hmm. So
Um,
narrowing even further toward the acting, going, I know
it
for
made
sure I
me
want to do acting.
go,
Yeah.
yeah, I think I learned, especially in my audition process, I was like, I'm really responding to these places that are very acting focused and mainly an
Hmm.
acting school that have musical theater training also.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um,
And what made you
and
pull the trigger with CMU over at UNCSA?
and I think it was mainly because I was like, I think I might get a little more bang for my buck if I do the musical theater program,
Uh-huh.
because I'm gonna get the exact curriculum as my classmates who are in the acting program. Like, it's the same.
Yep.
And then also I will do voice lessons and dance lessons.
Yep. I love it.
Um,
You mentioned already your parents being so supportive, which is so nice. What does that look like? What did support look like? Obviously, they were able to pay for lessons and drive you to things before those kind of
yeah.
things. But what did your relationship look like in terms of what worked about their support?
I think it's also, uh, they never made me feel stupid. They never made me feel like I was, that this was like a foolhardy mission
Uh-huh.
of mine. I think they just genuinely believed in me, and I think they genuinely believed that I could do it.
Hmm.
And because I remember going to them, I must have been like 15, 14 or 15. And I remember like very clearly like going into my mom's room and I was like, I think I want to do this as a profession.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's going to be an uphill battle because we don't know anybody. I said we, like mommy, we're going to have to do this together. Like
Yep.
we don't know anybody really. Like we just kind of know that we like it, and like I don't know how I'm going to figure this out. Like I didn't go to, you know, like a conservatory high school like Walnut Hill or
Yep.
Interlochen or something like that that would have the infrastructure. And I was like, we're going to have to kind of fight for it, but I think I can do it. My mom was like, hell yeah.
That's
You
cool.
know,
Yeah.
it's cool and rare. And
Yep.
so I do want to make sure I am very clear that I do not think I would have gotten through all of that, at least not as quickly, without the help of my parents.
Yeah. It sounds like, there was something helpful about Rin being able to say, I believe in you, but maybe that first I believe in you came from mom. Maybe you hear a
Yes.
slightly different thing from someone who's gone through it themselves, but it starts with a little bit of mom or dad saying, hey, I believe in you. You
Yeah.
can do this. Yeah.
Absolutely, both of my parents, and then it was actually helpful for them too to have someone like Rin who was working and lived in New York and had gone to a good school be like, this kid can do this. I think
Yes.
it also helped my parents be like, okay, let's pay for the Common App, like, or pay for all
Yeah.
these applications and
Totally.
do all that. Oh, the
Yeah.
other reason I ended up for sure going to Carnegie Mellon is they did give me, with the help of my dad's GI Bill, it was
Uh-huh.
completely free for us.
Oh my gosh, Molly, that's
Yeah.
awesome. Completely free then.
So that was, and like North Carolina would have been, I think I would have been able to get like in state
Uh-huh.
because I was from there. But I think it was also a financial thing of we were
Yep.
with like that. So we didn't have to take out loans,
Boy,
which is really unbelievable
you're
and a
just trying to make
huge
all the
gift.
people on the podcast listeners, all of them jealous for so many reasons. They're already jealous of the success and all they've been. Oh,
Oh,
there's a free school. They heard 9 schools. They heard I went to school for free, and they're ready just to dismiss you entirely. Um,
I'm so sorry.
with that, we'll take a quick little break, and then we'll talk a little bit more about Carnegie Mellon and beyond for you. So we're back in a flash.
Okay, cool.
All right, we are back with the great Molly Griggs, just discussing her incomparable experience in the college audition process. So fantastic for all of you to try to mimic that. Let's talk a little bit about the Carnegie Mellon experience. So, you had these grand expectations of it's a school you're really interested in. How did it line up with those expectations? What was the experience, and was it what you expected it to be? Did it exceed? Did it underwhelm? How was that for you?
Oh, honestly, Carnegie Mellon exceeded my expectations. Um, it was harder than I thought it would be.
Mm-hmm.
And I was expecting it to be hard. It was really rigorous. Like our day would start at like 8 with ballet class, and then we would have Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we had acting for like 4 hours.
Mm-hmm. For like 3 hours. You're telling me 4 hours actually, Molly?
Was it 3?
Not for us. I
Maybe
don't know.
maybe it was
I think it was.
3.
Yeah, we did like for us the actors. It was like yoga and then 3 hours of acting, like 9 to noon.
Yeah. It was 9 to noon. That's what it
Yeah,
was. Yeah. Okay, you're right. And then
okay.
you'd have, and
Well,
then you'd have
4.95 is not looking so good with that subtraction we're doing here. 4 hours, 9 to noon. Gotcha. Okay, fine.
I told you math is bad.
Oh, I saw the SATs. Yeah.
And I yeah, and then we
So
would
ballet,
have,
3 hours of acting. Yeah.
and then acting, and then I think there would be something after that, and
Yeah.
then and
A
then
voice and speech, something like that. Yeah.
Tuesdays and Thursdays were like movement, voice and
Yeah.
speech, uh and then some other like thing, like it would be like uh sophomore year you would do like mask stuff and
Mm-hmm.
move. Yeah, it was like a lot of things, and then
Okay.
we had a few general things, like writing for freshmen or whatever it
Mm-hmm.
was,
Had a
our
theater history in
freshman.
there somewhere. Yeah.
I never had to do that.
Never, because what, you opted out of it?
I didn't have theater history. I took like a women playwright class with Wendy Aarons, who is
Uh
the
huh.
dramaturgy
And,
professor.
and that just
Who
set aside that credit, Wendy Aarons. It's
when
different time for me. That's after
I
she's from after my time.
You didn't have Wendy?
I
Oh,
think she
that's
came on right at the end maybe it was like my last year she was coming on. Yeah.
she's the coolest. She's still like, she'll still reach out. She'll come see me and stuff in New York. She's really cool, really sweet.
So nice.
Yeah.
And how did the musical theater versus acting of it all line up for you? So if you're sort of doing, you expected it, hey, this is mostly going to be an acting degree with some musical theater on top. Then when you got there, did you feel like, well, I'm doing a lot of musical theater? Did it line up how you expected it to be?
Yeah. Um, I I found the voice lessons to be really intense and rigorous. And we would learn like there would be like a kind of like a rep class where you would just be like, we would all learn like a song from a musical, and we would kind of sing through the musical.
Yep.
So it's like lots of just like learning a little bit of like musical theater history.
Yep.
Um, and then we would have dance, like lots of dance.
Yep.
Um, but you know, for the listeners, we don't perform for the first 2 years. So there was no auditioning for the musical as a
Mm-hmm.
freshman. You had to wait until you were a junior and senior to do
By
plays
perform, you
in
mean don't
musicals.
perform in main stage shows. It's not that you're not doing work in
Right. No,
classrooms or those kind of things, but yeah,
yeah, like
you're not
you
doing a
do
full musical.
you don't do a full musical. And also your freshman year, when you do those classroom projects, you're not doing musicals. Like it's
Yeah,
plays.
plays. Yeah, for sure.
It's
Yeah.
plays.
Yep.
Which I liked. And I did have classmates who were MTs who were a little bit like, where's the musical theater stuff? Like,
Yep.
why aren't we doing more of that?
Totally.
Personally, it was a good balance for someone like me who wants to kind of do all kinds of
Let's
stuff.
do it all. Yep.
Um,
What about, do
yeah.
you remember the showcase process for you? Do you remember sort of what your showcase process was like, and then your results and your experiences? Or what was that? What was that senior year sort of launching into the business look like for you?
Yeah, I had a really good stroke of luck my senior year where they had this manager named Erica Tuckman come to visit us in the fall and meet all of us, and we all did a monologue for her. And she and I started working together actually in the fall of our
So you're
senior
signed on
year.
before you showcase at this point.
I had a manager before
Yeah.
Showcase, and I am
Yeah.
still with her.
Yeah. That's
She's
amazing.
she's my girl.
Yeah.
So I had her to help bolster the showcase experience.
Yeah.
So she was able to pepper in a couple extra meetings for me, which was
Uh-huh.
very nice.
Yeah.
And yeah, in my showcase, there was a little to this whole thing of like, is Molly a musical theater person, or is Molly a acting person?
Yeah. It's the whole thing.
They were like, what should you do for your showcase? Like maybe you shouldn't sing, because they just were like, I think that this is going to be your way in. Like, obviously, like you do sing and you like have a great voice, but this
Yep.
is like, I think going to be your way in. And we opted up. I did sing actually. And then I did a scene from Sports Night,
Mm-hmm.
Aaron Sorkin.
I did a
And
scene for
then
Sports Night in my showcase. You
you
stole my
did?
scene.
Wait, which scene?
I'm sure it's the same scene. I'm sure it's Dana and
Yeah, like it was like, oh, you think I'm smoky?
yeah.
That scene? Yeah,
How dare you?
I did
How
that.
dare you?
How absolutely dare you?
Yeah. Wait, I did it first.
Listen, I think Ingrid gave it to me, so she
Yeah,
probably gave it to you
as they
too.
should. As they should, of course. Anything that worked. That was all. I mean, I was looking at other people's scenes when we were doing it. Of course,
Exactly.
it was.
Yeah, Ingrid Sonicson directed my showcase.
Yeah,
And she was awesome. And
amazing.
then
Did you see Sports Night and you sang something?
and I sang something. And then I did a secret third thing because of the numbers. They needed another scene
Like
partner
a
for
scene with
somebody.
someone else. You secret. Yeah.
Yeah, so I got a secret. I got kind of lucky.
You got
Got like
bonus, and that's why you succeed. It's because you got 3. Everyone else got 2, and they got screwed.
hey, people did really well in my showcase, so
I
I
believe it.
think everybody did fine.
I believe it. No,
um,
but it's such a
yeah,
big thing. It's so weird to be like, and again, I think for the freshman listeners, for the seniors in high school who are listening, you think about like, well, do I choose acting or MT? And it's this huge decision. And of course, it is a big decision. You're going to study something different. But I remember that at Showcase being like, wait, I could just sing if I want to, even though I studied acting. But like, you could, if you're like, yeah, if that's what shows you off well and you want to sing. Like, I strongly considered singing. And I remember some musical theater people going, should I do 2 scenes so I can show off 2 different parts? I think I want to do more TV and film at this point. You're like, you make that decision senior year, like it's going to be, you're deciding your life path. And then
of
it's not
course,
necessarily so binary as that.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. It all feels so important, and like they're not. It's not important, but it just kind of is like it's going to be fine.
Yeah.
like, remember, y'all, like, Patrick Wilson was a musical theater person, and
Yep.
he did do musicals. He did the
Yep.
Full Monty on
Full
Broadway,
Monty. Yep.
but he also, like, I mean, he is like such
Movie
a
star.
movie
Yeah.
star. Like, he's a
Yeah.
film. Like, Matt Bomer was a musical
Yep.
theater
Zach Quinto for
major.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah, like these guys who are, and they're beautiful actors, and like have
And
the
Josh Gad wasn't musical theater major.
exactly,
Yeah.
yes. So it's
Yeah.
just like you're gonna burrow your way into whatever path it is, regardless of what your major is.
Now this is
Honestly.
becoming too insular. Now this is just two CMU grads bragging about CMU grads. First, I started out bragging about MTCA grads. This is too much. It's too many name drops, Molly. We can't do it anymore. Talk to me a little bit about what was the first year for you. So you already had the manager. Was it a pretty quick? Hey, now what's the timeline to booking Hello Dolly or to starting to get some of these big things that are happening for you? Was there a bit of a wait, or was it like, hey, I hit the ground running and I really jumped in?
I had a good first year.
Yeah.
I did 2 off-Broadway plays,
Yeah.
and I shot the Succession pilot.
That was the
Like,
first year, Succession?
yes.
Wow.
But wait, here's an important step actually. And this kind of sucks because it doesn't really exist anymore. But I was a non-equity company
Yeah.
member at Williamstown
Yeah.
the summer I graduated. So, and I got my first play because of
From
being
Williamstown.
there,
And that was
meeting somebody there.
not between the summers between school. That was right after school, senior year. You
I
were in. Yeah.
graduated
And then
and I
Williamstown.
went and I
Yeah.
packed the car and went to Williamstown.
Yeah.
Somebody saw a play there. I got my first play at Page 73
Yeah.
from there, and then somebody saw that, and then I got the Succession pilot. Like, everything kind of was begetting itself. It wasn't just on the auditions alone. It
Yeah.
was because somebody saw me in something.
Yeah.
Which is very cool. And I'm so bummed that that non-equity program doesn't really exist anymore, because that was such a perfect way to bridge the gap from school
Yeah.
to professional life.
Yeah.
Um,
Those are
yeah.
sadly disappearing at a lot of places. A lot of those sort of like internship, apprenticeship kind of bridges to success. Not all gone, but there's fewer of them there. It feels like there were a lot of them when we were graduating.
Right.
I know
Like,
for different years, but when I graduated, I felt like there was a lot of them. Yeah.
like, people would go to Chautauqua,
Mm-hmm.
or, and I think that still exists,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
Chautauqua.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like doing summer stock at the Muni, and like, like these are just great ways to
Build that resume.
build
Make
the
those connections.
resume and to meet people.
What about, so you're thriving professionally in that first year. What about the first year of moving to New York City from like a human perspective? Like, coming from North Carolina, then going to school in Pittsburgh. Like, what was the first year of like adjusting to the city? Figuring out the subways but just what was that experience of like, oh my God, I'm here in the city and now I'm a working actor. What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I was just so happy. I really just I love New York, and I had I'd spent some time here before.
Uh-huh.
And most of my class moved to New York.
Yep.
And, like I said, I met my husband in school. We were dating at the time. And so his class became a big part of my life. And my community is still my community from school.
Yeah, for sure.
So that was a very soft landing. I had community. I had people to ask, like, hey, where do I take voice lessons? What are you auditioning for? Should I go in for that? Should I like text my people about that? Like, that was it was a very soft landing. I think it's still, New York is still so hard, and figuring out how to, this was a big wake up call. I did 2 off-Broadway shows back to back, and could barely afford my life, could barely pay my bills. So I was like, oh, I'm doing these amazing plays at a high level with amazing actors, and I'm not being paid enough to do this. So I was catering as well on the side, and like doing some babysitting stuff. And then I remember the summer after, like, I'd been here for 1 year, and that summer I worked in a restaurant in Bushwick for about 4 months, and then I got Hello Dolly. And then that was able to
the first
kind
time
of
you can
like,
actually pay the bills. I mean, it is crazy that off Broadway, like you cannot describe properly how prestigious some of those off Broadway shows are. That like how hard they are to book, and then at least back in the day, it'd be like $400 a week, $500 a week. You're like, this can't be what you're paying for this.
I was like,
high level talent.
You can't be serious, and it's true. It's like and I still feel this way. It's like the best material, the best writers
Yes. The best work. Yeah.
are happening in these amazing off-Broadway theaters. And so
Yep.
that's where you want to be.
Yeah.
That's where all the good stuff is happening.
Yep.
Um, but you
Yeah.
kind of need another
How does the
job.
economic model work that those actors can get paid is something for us to figure out, but not on this very podcast.
Yeah.
But so do you feel like, when you look back, that community obviously really helped you. Was there anything that you felt like CMU either really prepared you well for, as you're talking about those first couple of years out of school looking back, or was there stuff that you go, oh, I wish they'd give me a little more of this, or it could be stuff that you go, I just had to figure it out on my own. But was there anything that you felt like, hey, from an education perspective, this was missing for me? I was surprised moving to the city by this.
I don't know if I was really prepared for having lean times happen after successful times. Because, like I said, that first 2 years were really good. And then I
It's
had,
off Broadway, Hello Dolly.
yes,
Yeah.
that was all the way until like 2018. And then I had some pretty serious gaps.
Yeah.
6 months. I didn't work for a year and a half, like right
Yeah.
after COVID, like a lot of people did.
Yeah.
And that was hard because you're just like, like I have done these things and like how it doesn't add up.
Yeah.
And it can be really a tough pill to swallow to go back to the service industry after you've been on Broadway.
Yeah.
It can be it can just be really tough emotionally.
Yeah.
And
How do you get through that?
especially,
How did you get through, or how do you when those gaps happen for you?
I think you just have to lean on your community. Like you have to be able to talk to your friends and like have people in your life to be who are not going to make you feel badly for your feelings, but are also going to give you perspective. Like my husband. I remember I was saying that when I didn't work for like a year and a half,
Mm-hmm.
but during that time I was getting all the way to the end for jobs that would have changed my life. And my husband was always like, it's law of averages. Like it is, he's like, this, it's like baseball. Like you are like, you don't get that close and then not
Mm-hmm.
get a hit. Like
Mm-hmm.
you will get a hit. And then I
Mm-hmm.
did, and it was okay. And it will be okay. And I'm going to have those fallow times again for sure. And I think being creative about how you can weather that financially and
Yeah.
also emotionally, because it's very hard for highly creative and emotional people to not have an outlet for that energy. It can eat you up.
For sure. Absolutely. Can we talk a little bit about the audition experiences? Do you remember your Hello Dolly audition? Do you remember what sort of what it was that you did to book it? Do you sort of remember what the process was?
Yeah, well, I auditioned for the original cast like right before I went to Williamstown.
Mm-hmm.
um, and I had a great audition but didn't get a call back. And then Beanie Feldstein did it, and she did the original cast. And then that following summer, they were like, they want to bring you back in, and they brought me straight to the full creative team.
Uh-huh.
And the last time I had heard tell was my initial audition for the original cast.
Uh-huh.
Like this was a year ago. So this is also, it's just like not every no is really a no.
And so you come in, you're like, do I do what didn't get me a call back last time again? Do I make changes? Like,
Right.
what
Well,
do I do?
I didn't even remember what I did.
Yeah.
Because it was a year had gone
Yeah.
by, and so
And a big
I
year
don't
too.
know.
Yeah.
I just did what I thought what I found to be funny, and
Yeah.
I also had not seen the because it was very expensive to
Yeah.
go see that
You're like, you're
production.
going to buy
So
me a ticket as part of this callback?
I was like, if y'all want to take me to see it,
Yeah.
and
It's a whole week of your off Broadway work for you to buy a ticket, basically.
that's what I'm saying. It was so
Yeah.
expensive. So I wanted to desperately, but I didn't have any context for like, what was going on in the show. So I wasn't really sure what they were looking for.
And
They
what is
had
that
said,
full creative? We've heard some of the examples of it, but for those who've not been to a full creative audition, what does that look like in terms of who's talking to you, the adjustments you're getting? You're seeing a big room of people. What's that looking like?
yeah. So it's the director, probably the associate director, the music supervisor, or the musical director. But it's
Mm-hmm.
usually the supervisor. And then there was the choreographer and the associate choreographer, and I think some producers. And then, but I remember maybe specifically it was in that initial like full creative team thing. It was like the associate choreographer, associate director, and director. And
Hmm.
then they brought me back a week later with like everyone with like
Hmm.
producers as well. And
Hmm.
that's intimidating. You're in front of a table of like 10 people, and they're
And
all very serious.
what's that process? You're talking about the risk taking that you did artistically in your college auditions. What's that process like of like, okay, so I'm doing this thing from a year ago. Maybe I don't remember it. I'm knocking that out of the park. Guess I can understand to some extent what your approach is there. How are you approaching then the callback when now they're bringing you in for more people, versus the idea of are you replicating what you've done before? Are you still trying to play with something new? So what's your sort of process of going, what do I bring in now when they brought me back in now for this callback?
I pretty much refired what I did the
Mhm.
week earlier.
You're like,
And
I'm
this
trying to
is,
prove that I can do this 8 shows a week. I did it before. I'm doing it again.
well, and it's particularly, I think, a good move in a show like that, which is a comedy and it's so technical. Like the way, like it's music, it's rhythm
Hmm.
actually. So I think making sure that I had the rhythm for the jokes.
Yeah.
Um,
You're showing this was not an accident. I know what I have a technique. I know what I'm doing to do this
yeah,
again. You're not going
I
like, look
do.
at this crazy different way I would do it.
Right. Although I do remember, I think it was that final audition where I was doing it and I stumbled on my word because she has that monologue. Minnie Faye has that monologue where she's like, blah, 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 like a mile a minute when you first meet
Hmm.
her. And she just have to like, well, you just have to get your mouth around like a lot of language. And I remember that I stumbled on my word and
Hmm.
I just kept it bubbling over. Like I just kept stumbling on it and they started laughing really
Hmm.
hard. And so I kept doing it. And so that was just like a little happy accident
Yeah.
that just happened in the audition. And that didn't even make it into the play. Like
Right.
that moment did not get recreated for the play,
No,
but
but
it
you're
was
showing your
just,
game. You're alive in the
yeah,
moment.
it's just like there's no mistakes. Like if something wrong happens, like it might be the biggest gift and it might be your biggest laugh of
Yep.
the audition.
Yep. I love
Um,
it.
yeah,
What about in
it was
terms of
fun.
the difference with a play? So now, do you remember booking John Proctor? That can't be that long ago, right? This is
Yeah, it
now
was less than a
play.
year ago.
Play.
Yeah.
My God. So what's that audition process like? How does that look different now with a play versus a musical?
It was, I did not tape for it. I went in person.
No tape. So the
Um,
first audition was it in person?
it was in person.
That's awesome.
This is a
Rare.
casting director who it's Taylor Williams who um, actually cast me in that first Broadway off Broadway play.
Hmm.
So we had a relationship. So she brought me directly to work with Danya and Kimberly, the director and playwright. Um, and we just kind of chatted and like just did the scene. And, it's about people in Appalachian, Georgia, and I'm from North Carolina. And they said, don't do an accent in your audition. And I did it anyway, because I
Hmm.
was like,
Like, this is my natural accent. I'm
I'm
not
from
doing
this
an accent.
place.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So I
Yeah.
was just like, they're not going to be mad if it's good.
Yeah. That's right. No, but it's a great theme, Molly, in terms of the willingness to be bold. You talk about in your college editions, and it doesn't mean you always have to break all the rules, but the confidence to go, I'm right. I'm just going to be right. I mean, but we had Calvin Smith on, who's just was in Cabaret. Who's talked about that. He's like, there's times when I'm just like, I'm just going to do the version of it that I think is really good, because if I'm trying to make their version good, then I'm giving you halfway in between. So it's not like you ignore what they want, but you're like, if I play the part, I'd do this, so I'm going to do this. Like, makes sense.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and especially if it's something that's authentic to you.
Yeah.
Like I'm like let them every audition, no matter what the character is or how far or close it is to you, it is an opportunity for them to meet you.
Yes. That's so well said. What about the TV and film of it all? So you've had a lot of success. I didn't even read all of the TV and film IMDb there in terms of booking some of those, some recurring roles, some roles on some big shows, like you're talking about Succession. How did those auditions look different? And maybe I'd love to hear like what was Succession like? I'm imagining that might not have been a self tape, though you can tell me if I'm wrong. But then now imagine many more of these TV film auditions are self tapes now. So talk to
Mm.
me about. I want to hear maybe the pre self tape version of TV and film auditions, and then self tapes in terms of your experience. But maybe let's start with that the Succession audition or those early days of TV and film auditions.
Yeah. I remember the Succession audition. It was Doug Abel and Stephanie Holbrook's office. I love them. they've been so good to me. I just love the projects that they work on.
Mm-hmm.
And that was in person. And Doug still does a lot of in-person stuff,
Mm-hmm.
which I just think is cool. And we just did it once, I believe, maybe
Mm-hmm.
twice. And it was really fast. And then it was like a week went by. I remember this because it was my birthday. And they were like, oh, they want you to come back in next week and do a chemistry read with Kieran Culkin. And I was like, okay. And uh, I remember it was in person. So I got to like actually sit in the room. Now chemistry reads are on Zoom,
Mm-hmm.
which is
That's
like
where we have the best chemistry.
A Zoom chemistry read is like an oxymoron.
Yeah.
So, we got to be in the room together and like we were making each other laugh and,
Yeah.
the material was the script was so good. So we
Yeah.
were just having a ton of fun and, um,
And
yeah.
freshly out of school as you are then, whether it's stuff that you got directly from school or just your own instincts, like what are you doing that's different? Imagine we're not that far apart between our Hello Dolly audition and our Succession audition. What are you doing stylistically different in that TV and film audition? If there's any different approach. I mean, is it just like, hey, I'm acting truthfully and that's it? But is there anything that you're doing that you're going technique wise? Hey, I'm going to make this shift. This is a TV audition. This is a chemistry read. I'm going to approach this differently than I would my comedic Hello Dolly audition.
Honestly, not really.
Yeah.
Because people talk a lot about like size for, you have to be quote unquote small for film and
Yeah.
TV. And I just think that's a red herring. I think that's a misdirection because people in real life behave in really theatrical, huge ways all the time. As long as it is real,
Mm-hmm.
it's gonna read beautifully. Think about everyone's like De Niro and Taxi Driver. Like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, I'm walking here. Like it's like it doesn't feel false. It feels so real because it is, and he's doing so much physically. He's got his voice is big, his body gets big. It's just
Yeah.
like it doesn't matter. I don't think as long as you're telling the truth and you're not like acting with a capital A.
That's well said. And yeah, of course, Succession. I haven't watched it all the way through, but what I have watched of it is not a small show in terms of the scope of it and the action of it. I
No,
mean,
it's
these are
so
big, broad,
it's
dramatic.
Greek in
Yeah,
terms of the
yeah,
emotions
yeah.
and the dynamics. Yeah. So I think and all of the performances are so good on that show and all of them really did take big swings
Yes.
physically and vocally and yeah, and it
Afraid
feels
to be
like
cringe
real.
for sure. Yeah, then we talk
Yeah.
about going for it and being a little embarrassing at times, being on that borderline. I mean, yeah, from some of the scenes I've seen, I'm like, some of that content is like,
Well, and it's very, I mean, it's shot in that like slight mockumentary way
mm-hmm,
where it's like that kind of shaky handheld
mm-hmm,
look. And that is a style that really wants you to be cringe, quote
right,
unquote.
to
Like it
really
really
have the
wants you to
vulnerability.
be, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
What about any big self-taped secrets now that you're into the self-tapes of it all? Any things that have been really successful in terms of your experience of going? Sounds like you've had a decent amount even now of in-person auditions, but when you do have to self-tape, what's your secret? How do you make a book a self-tape?
I think my biggest thing now, I had to have many failures to get to this point because I really was resistant to the self tape stuff in the beginning. Um, but now I think it's about making a little movie and remembering that we're used to watching television and movies that are edited, right? So they're cutting every 3 seconds, and your tape is unedited.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to make it interesting because we're
And what does
used
that
to
mean? What do you do to make it a movie without? I imagine you're not literally
you
making those edits.
yeah, you have to move.
Uh-huh.
You have to create the new pictures. This is something that my teacher, JJ Perez, who is my teacher in New York, talks about a lot. Is that like you can't just sit in the middle of your frame and go bop, 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 bop,
Mm-hmm.
bop, 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 for the whole tape.
Mm-hmm.
You have to change the picture physically. So
Mm-hmm.
it feels like we're watching something edited, even though
So
it's
you're
not.
saying you move your face as if they were moving a camera,
I
basically.
move
Like
my body.
you move. I mean, saying you're giving. It's because the camera's not moving, but you yourself are
I
moving
am
your body to
moving.
make as if the camera were giving you different
Also sometimes I will move it, my camera.
camera. Hell
I
yeah.
mean, I don't know. I kind of am like, this is an opportunity to make a little short film, you
Yes.
know? Like there was once recently where it was like I was getting arrested in the
Uh-huh.
tape, and I was like, "Oh, what if we treated the camera like it was a body cam?"
Uh-huh.
And
And
so
like
I had
crash to the ground with you?
kinda, yeah. So, like,
Mhm.
I had my husband, like, to pick up the camera and, like, come with me so it was looked like it was a body cam, and I didn't book that, but, like, I was like, "This is for me, this is, like, a fun way to do this, and it gets me creatively excited, and so
Uh-huh.
why don't I just see what happens?"
So interesting. That is some actionable and interesting advice, Molly. We're gonna have to check back in 10 years to be like, did all those little
Yeah.
movies work for you?
Yeah,
I
we'll
don't know. We'll
see.
find out. But I do think a lot of actors are thinking like that, of thinking like, how do I be creative with my slates? How do I be creative with but going, how do I do something that isn't just me staring at the screen?
Yeah,
Especially with,
I think if it's warranted dramaturgically in the script,
yeah,
like, go for it. Like, don't do, like, cute stuff.
right.
Like,
You're saying you don't
you
need
know
a lot of silly props or a lot of, though I know some people do that with
No.
costumes and whatever, but
I mean,
you're
maybe,
saying for
yeah,
you, it's more
if it
camera angles, it's
feels
more movement.
if it feels right, like, but I wanted to for me, I'm like, make it about storytelling. Like, I'm
Hmm.
directing right now. Like,
Hmm.
and this is a moment where I'm a director and I'm the actor
Yep.
and I'm the camera operator.
Yep. Oh, so well done. It's helpful to you, I'm sure, to have a husband who's also an actor who also can help you do some of these things with
Actually,
moving.
he was a directing major.
Oh,
So,
even better. All right, so everyone, marry
he
a director is how you do
marry
this.
a writer director and have him do every single self
Smart.
tape. But I tell him, I'm like, listen, you get 50% commission on every job I book. So
That is actually I used to, yeah, I'd be like, I have to charge commission. I'm like, wait, I get 50% of this, so that's actually fair.
Exactly. It's like it's incentivized for this to go well.
All right, well, let's move to wrapping up. I'd love to. You've already given some great sort of tidbits and advice, but just as you look back on this process, and maybe thinking about the 17-year-old listener, especially. I know we have some into their 20s, but especially the young listener. Is there any advice that you would have? If someone goes, I want to be Molly Griggs. I want to get a Carnegie Mellon. I want to go to school for free. I want to book Succession my first year out. I want to have your career. What is the advice that you have for that young person in terms of how they could do that?
I think my advice to them is you are great and your weirdness and your individual light is going to take you where you need to go. And I think trying to be somebody else I think it's important to have people that you like look up to and respect, but at the end of the day, like there's nobody on planet Earth that is anything like you. And
Mm-hmm.
you and your humanity belong in every single story. So go get it.
That's well said. Well said. All right, Molly, is there anything we got to plug? Anything we know we're going to see you up? We can chat you right now on Netflix, I know, with in The Residence. Any other big things that you want to tell us about in terms of stuff you want to plug?
This is I'm proud of this because this is a big thing off of my New York actor bucket list. But I was
Yeah.
just on an episode of Law and Order SVU,
Oh, hell yeah. Oh,
and I
hell yeah.
had the best time. So I'm on the second episode of the season that's out right now. So it just came out last week. So
Did
go
you
watch
die?
SVU.
Did you
I
die?
don't
Were you the
die.
villain? Is it a,
I put the V in SVU, but
oh,
I don't die.
oh, a
So
living V.
a
Okay. I
living
love it.
V. Yeah.
Molly, thanks for today. Really, really appreciate the time.
Thank you. This is so fun.
Yes, yes, yes. So fun to get to chat with Molly. She was just a delight. Really sweet. And we did find out, we talked a little bit afterward as we were sort of downloading. Sometimes we talk in the pre-show with guests, sometimes we talk kind of post-show. But we did find out that SVU episode that she was talking about, that was recorded with friend of the pod, Corey Cott, another CMU alumni. God, more bragging. Corey now being a series regular on that very Law and Order SVU. So congrats to both of them. So exciting. And another thing that Molly realized only after in our conversation, I didn't realize that she didn't know what I meant. But after we stopped recording, she was like, oh, you mean your showcase scene? Like, we're talking about, we did the same scene, right? I was like, no, I literally like typed that scene up. I found it on a DVD and I typed it up and I wrote, K:D: whatever. And I cut it myself and I made all these edits, whatever. So I really do think that means we get to take like double credit for Molly, right? Not only an MTCA student, but then like I gave her showcase scene unbeknownst to her. So like we get like 20% of the rest of her career. I feel like should be what it is. I do actually remember Ingrid at one point telling me, oh, I've been giving out that sports night scene. And I didn't realize, of course, that it was to Molly. Too cute. Okay, in terms of takeaway, This is one I'm really going to try to weave into a number of different conversations in the next few months, since it's something that I have on my list to explore a bit more in general, and it's really a goal of mine to dive into. Kind of like how for a while we did a runner on type with like a number of artist guests, really over the course of a couple months, of like what type could mean, what it doesn't mean, what is branding, and all those things. How does it relate to the business versus how do you think of it in the college process? We did a lot of that, maybe last year and even into 2 years ago. I want to do kind of a 2.0 version of this on a few topics, which are like different topics, but also the same topic. Whether we're calling that confidence, which we've been talking about a little recently, or authenticity, or artistic point of view. These are all things that have come up in the past couple of weeks. It kind of, again, means the same thing, and it kind of means three different things. So I just want to have some in-depth conversations with a couple different people. I have some plans to do that, some of which have been recorded and some of which we're still going to record. I do just feel like those become like buzzwords that can get a little lost and that can get a little misinterpreted when we talk about like, what do you mean by confidence? Like, I know what a confident person is, but what do I actually mean? I'm not sure people necessarily know what that means. And certainly I know that's true with the phrase of like, be your authentic self. And we had that from like the 5th episode when someone was saying that, and we're going, yeah, okay, it's easier said than done. Who is that authentic self, right? I do think you understand, and most listeners understand the general idea of it, but not necessarily like, how does that actually apply to me? So I want to try to explore that a bit more in some longer conversations, and I'm making a note to do that. And, one aspect of that, which is, again, just one branch of that conversation that Molly really, I think, explored beautifully in this interview is, the confidence that it takes in the idea of like willing to be embarrassed, to what it is to be, willing to be vulnerable, to willing to be cringe, however you want to call it. We called it a couple different things here, right? In the interview, Molly challenged you to think about the best performances that you've loved in the past and ask yourself if they have an element of cringe to them. And for me, the first example that comes to mind, and maybe you have one that you think of, but because I was at the time, in college at school at Carnegie Mellon, like just like Molly, and I remember watching Thomas Hayden Church in Sideways. So Thomas Hayden Church, if you know, as an actor, he was in Wings. He was really a very handsome actor, kind of leading man style actor. And if you haven't seen the movie, it's a good movie. It's some great performances. Paul Giamatti's in it, right? It's very much like a movie of its era, of like the early 2000s. And so Thomas Hayden Church, he's in like a hotel room, I think, and he's like begging Paul Giamatti to help him to avoid getting caught for cheating on his fiance. Somehow they have to untangle whatever the web of cheating that Thomas Hayden Church has done. And the big thing I remember thinking was just, I will never forget how ugly he looked in his performance. Like, he was just like sobbing, but like his face just looked so ugly. Like he was truly snotting, and it was just like the face of a man actually at the end of his rope. And at least to me, I was like, that must actually be what Thomas Hayden Church looks like in actual life, because you would never fake that face. Whatever that face was, I'm like, that is a real face for you, right? And it's very different than a lot of the beautiful crying that you might have seen if you watch a soap opera or you watch a TV melodrama, even some really great movie dramas. You'll often see kind of this beautiful crying. Not that people don't cry beautifully sometimes, right? But I just remember being struck by like the vulnerability that it took, or as Molly put it, the willingness to be embarrassed that it took to be able to give that kind of performance. And again, I was studying acting at the time, so I would ask myself, like, am I willing to actually be that kind of ugly? That's a bar that I wanted to reach for myself, right? It can feel like it's like a really kind of like unglamorous nakedness. It's like the kind of nakedness at the doctor's office when you don't feel good about it or whatever, right? It's like, can you actually show what it's like when I'm in the midst of like Charlie at the bottom of my actual barrel, and that kind of life experience, and how I would actually cry in that moment, as opposed to the idea of like how my character would cry, this idea of this person that I've constructed, and maybe they would cry like this, which again is just going to feel a little bit safer if you're kind of putting on that mask. Right. Or, I also noted, like, when we talk about cringe, I think I told you all that I'm rewatching The West Wing. I'm in the process of it. In our dark political times, I was like, I need a little bit of a safe rewatch of the West Wing, and how it's one of my favorite shows. There is absolutely so much cringe on the West Wing, right? It is outdated and it is cheesy to a high level at times, right? And it is, in so many ways, a really flawed show. But the moments where it hits, to me, it hits so hard and so well because of its willingness to be cringe, because of its willingness to ride that line, And I do understand some people might watch that show with modern eyes. If you've never seen it and you're 17-year-old watching it today, you might be like, it's hard to see through the elements of what is outdated. And sure, I think it's all fair, right? But sometimes in those things that are outdated, you can actually see like a boldness and a willingness to be embarrassed that I actually think can be missing from a lot of shows today. That was maybe a little more common back then. Though, again, not universally. I do think some shows, we talk about Succession, which is not exactly completely modern, but relatively modern show. And seems like an example of a show that really does have a willingness to be potentially cringe and to be out there and all those things. I've only seen a few episodes of Succession, so I shouldn't talk too deeply about it. But I do think a lot of TV and movies that you watch will never take those big swings. And you could basically like watch the whole thing, you could enjoy it, but never be like deeply moved, never be deeply touched by it, right? I won't use an example of whatever show that might come to mind. Maybe you have one that pops into your head, but for me, there are a couple that I go, yeah, that's a perfectly good show that just doesn't. I'm never moved. I'm never really affected, right? And again, if we're giving some audition advice, in general, you'd rather be the West Wing than that safe but unremarkable show, even if you're a bit flawed if you are the West Wing. Which leads me to the other takeaway. Sort of said two takeaways that are really kind of one, which is just really about risk taking or willingness to be risky. It's related, but not the same as willingness to be vulnerable. I think those two things are similar, but not identical, right? Molly said the idea of one thing she thought she did really well was she was going to risk it for the biscuit. I like that phrase, but it's just like an attitude perspective that I think you need to have. Depending on what you actually do, you might actually take big risks, but you need to be able to have that perspective of going, I am willing to take risks. There's this monologue from Troilus and Cressida that plenty of girls wind up doing, which it starts with the line of like, boldness comes to me now and brings me heart. And I just feel like almost every monologue should start with the idea of boldness comes to me now and brings me heart, right? Here goes nothing. I'm going to take a leap, right? There's got to be a willingness to dive in and not know exactly what's going to happen. And it's always such tricky advice to give when we talk about risks. We've talked about risks before in some of the takeaways. I think we did in Jonathan Bernstein's episode. But it really is about like a willingness to challenge yourself and go for those risks. It doesn't mean you necessarily have to do anything that is quote unquote risky, right? But we, the actor, need to be able to put ourselves forward in that like, forward leaning, risk taking kind of place, right? And there's no universal guidelines to like what are good risks versus what aren't good risks. But I do think it's a place where having some artistic guidance, especially some expert artistic guidance, is really helpful. To have a sense of like, is this a bold choice? And boldness generally is good, or I'm actually falling into a pitfall that I should really avoid, right? When Molly talked about her sides, I think this was for John Proctor, and she was saying like, it said, don't do the accent. Don't worry about accents, right? And she said, I'm going to do it anyway. I think it's a great example of a risk that was smart for her to take, but of course, a risk that is case by case, right? Casting was giving you the hint of, hey, don't get caught up in the accent. We want to meet you as an actor. We don't want to have the idea of an accent get between you and me, right? You and us being able to see your ability. We know we'll have an accent dialect coach. We'll be able to teach you the accent, so we're not concerned about it, right? But did it help her that she showed up in an authentic accent that actually was her? I think it probably did, right? Does that mean that she couldn't have booked the role without doing the accent? I don't think so. I think she probably could have booked the role without the accent, right? But often it comes down to that idea of like good artistic taste when you're talking about taking risks that you might or might not take. I do say in general, if you have an instinct to take a particular risk, if it feels right to you, if your artistic instincts say this feels right, and the only reason you're not doing it is because you see on a website, avoid this, avoid X, I would generally trust your instinct as opposed to the thing of saying, avoid this pitfall. Again, it depends exactly what it is, but often those like, this can be a trap kind of comments are for the kind of people who might follow into those traps. But if you know how to leap over it and that you're going to fly, then fly, right? Then don't stress about not falling into a trap that you think you would avoid, right? Again, it's that idea of like, you got to be able to swing for a home run and leave it all on the field. So if you feel like it's a choice between playing it safe and challenging yourself, I would generally vote challenge yourself, right? But then what that exactly means, I know people hear that and go, okay, what does that mean? Do I do this or do I do this? It is something that you got to think through with some consciousness, right? You should not be consciously breaking the rules just to show you're willing to be edgy, right? You want to be smart about it. For instance, I would never advise a student to do a 5-minute monologue just because they love the whole piece of the 5-minute monologue and they think that's a good artistic choice if a school asks for 90 seconds, right? Now, feel free, learn the 5-minute version if you want to, in case in the room they want to play with you. That's great, right? But give them something a little closer to what they're asking for from a time perspective. That's the kind of risk where it could feel disrespectful to their time, and it's not really helping you as a student in that case, right? But something like swearing in a piece, for example, When you feel it's artistically justified, for me, that can be a worthy risk in a lot of cases for the right student, even though plenty of websites will say avoid swearing. Again, when I say the right student, I wouldn't swear if you're not someone who naturally swears in life. Have we all noticed like politicians have started swearing all of a sudden? It's like some PR person has released a memo and they all just decide to start swearing because it's going to make them look authentic because they're swearing, which of course then has the opposite effect of someone who's like trying to look authentic when it's not them, right? But I would say with something like swearing, taste wants to enter into the equation. I do think a good general rule of thumb, if you want one, is like I wouldn't generally advise saying anything worse than the F word in an audition. You can imagine some words that might be more offensive to some than the F word, whether that's a curse word, particularly vulgar word, a word that's a slur or something like that, could really take a faculty member out of the moment. But again, I'm never going to draw an exact hard and fast rule of what is and isn't okay because it really depends on the person, right? But you can imagine from the faculty perspective why some of those rules exist because faculty members have spent years sitting behind tables watching ill-advised students fall into pitfalls that prevented them from evaluating their talent to the full extent, whether that's because material was so uncomfortably sexual or was really filled with profanity or is so wrong from an age perspective that it's really hard for the student to connect to. And the faculty member goes, I don't get to meet you because you're playing this part that just didn't make any sense for you. But so often, what they're objecting to in those cases are the choices being bad, not the choice being risky, right? If it's the idea that it was a bad choice for a student that was executed badly, then that might end up on those pitfalls, even though there's nothing wrong with the idea of taking a risk, right? If you ask most of those faculty, I'll bet they could remember examples of a piece with swearing or with some sexuality or where an actor played an age or identity that wasn't their own and it went swimmingly, right? Or that they didn't even notice because they didn't know the age of the character, but it didn't feel odd to them. And so it worked, right? Because it was justified as a good artistic choice. Of course, even when you do that, even when you make what I would call a quote unquote good artistic choice, or what I would subjectively say is a good artistic choice, there is subjectivity because some faculty members may love that choice and others hate it. I think often the riskier the choice, the more likely some are to really love it and some go, it really wasn't for me, right? But to me, that's what makes a risk a good risk is that there's an element of win or lose to it. There's an element of risk, right? But to me, then you're in the category of attracting the right schools to you. If it's a risk you can really stand behind, it's one that you really believe in. And again, the most important thing from this takeaway, which I think you can take probably from what Molly said without me even expanding on it as well, is what is important is the willingness to be a risk taker, that she was willing to risk it for the biscuit, right? She didn't talk about any particularly risque material she did, other than she said, hey, this was challenging emotionally to me, right? Even if all of your material is completely within all the boundaries and all the rules, which again would be true for many of our MTCA students, that all of their material avoids all of the things that says avoid. There's nothing wrong with that. But is there still emotional vulnerability to it, the way Molly talked about it? Does it ride that line of being challenging enough for you that's going to keep you engaged over the next couple months without, of course, being so challenging that you're actually going to miss it most of the time? You want to have that material where the adrenaline and the stakes of the moment are going to match the material. If it's so comfy and easy for you that it's boring, that's not good, right? But if it's so difficult to reach that all you're thinking about is, can you hit that note or can you get to that emotional place because you can only actually execute it 10% of the time? Now, to me, that's way too risky. And actually, that's going to make me feel unsafe in audition. I'm going to be so worried about that I'm actually going to prevent myself from taking the kind of emotional risks that I want to take. But again, I do think that's where a trusted coach, a trusted mentor who really knows what they're doing is really helpful in guiding that. Art making normally should have a bit of danger to it, right? But figure out exactly how to calibrate the level of the danger. It can be really hard at 17. Okay. And then the last little one I jotted down from Molly was, she was talking about the difficulty of struggling after success, that she had that really early success. And then she was surprised by how difficult it was after. To me, this is one of those things where it can be really hard in 2025, where we are so aware of like the difficulty of everyone's experiences. But just to say, those little hardships and those little struggles are also valid. And I hate saying the word valid. I feel like it makes me feel like such a cliche in 2025. But there you go. That's me being cringe, I guess. I'm risking being cringe in this very takeaway. But I think a lot of us experienced versions of this idea of what I'm talking about during COVID, when a lot of people had a really hard time. But we also were so aware of the people who were literally dealing with death and disease or destitution because of their jobs. And that people then felt bad, like grieving their smaller losses in the grand scheme. But so many people did have those small losses, whether, it's the beginning of their careers cut short for so many of our students who were just getting out of school, or jobs they were really excited about that got canceled, whatever it was. I've talked before about how hard it was with our family, with Elizabeth, and the experience of Jagged Little Pill and what it could have been, but it wasn't because of COVID. And we're never going to really fully know what all that could have been. And of course, in the grand scheme of like actors and career, is that a small tragedy? Of course, right? But it's still tragic within her life experience. I was thinking about this recently with the baseball playoffs, and there's this pitcher who made like a really boneheaded error where they like threw to the wrong base and was so obvious any little leaguer could have done it, but they made this mistake and it bounced their team out of the playoffs. Happens all the time in sports, right? And in the grand scheme of the universe, this person is being paid millions of dollars to play a child's game. So of course it's a small tragedy, but to them, that experience is a tragedy that is deeply felt, right? And I bring this up in the college process, especially because I think it's equivalent to the students who have their heart set on that certain school that they might get rejected from, but then they like still do extremely well in the process. But the heartbreak of the school that doesn't happen is still real. And I think it's easy for us to feel like, boo-hoo, there are plenty of people who didn't get into any big school. So what do you have to complain about? You got into X, Y, and Z. But to me, the answer is there is still plenty to mourn, right? The loss of that dream is still the loss of a dream. Even if we know it's true, as people who've gone through this process 20 times, or as parents who know a little bit more in life, right? Even if we know it's true that the place where you ultimately ended up getting accepted might actually be better for you and might actually be where you belong, there's still that mini grief and that mini loss, right? I think about this romantically all the time. You could feel like you are the luckiest person in the world in the partner you found, which of course, for the record, I do. But still, there are those other people and those other heartbreaks that are still real. There could still be the one who got away, even if the one you caught is wonderful, right? And I think now, after many years of therapy, I think it is healthy to let ourselves have that grief and really feel precisely whatever that loss is, because then it allows us to fall in love again, right? Whether that's with a person or whether that's with a part that you don't book or a college or a new artistic dream later in your life. To love and grieve and heal, I think, is a lot healthier than just not letting yourself do it at all. And now when our students so often tell me they don't have any dream schools and they really, really don't care, and for them it's just about artistic fit, mostly I'm going to celebrate them because I think that means they do understand this process and its complexity way more than students did 15 years ago. I mean, it certainly is better than it was 20, 15 years ago when students would come in thinking all the answers lie at one school or at a small handful of schools, which I definitely don't believe to be true. However, if you're actually like holding yourself back from falling in love with a school at all, or maybe even developing a bit of a crush or a small love affair with a school, I think you're now overcorrecting a bit, right? I'd actually rather you do let yourself fall deeply in love, maybe with a few schools, and trust yourself that the right school will fall back in love with you, even if you know that means there's going to be some heartbreak along the way. Okay, these takeaways went really long today. Oh my, I'm going to end with just a little Mr. Rogers moment for you all. Another Pittsburgher, a lot of Pittsburgh in this episode. But if you haven't had a Rin McLemore, that was Molly's coach, tell you that you have got it yet, I just want to say I wish that deeply for all of you. And for now, let this be a placeholder for you all. I believe in you. If you've made it this far into 200 some episodes of this podcast, you have a spark and an interest and something artistic to say. And I believe you can fan that spark into a flame. And the sooner that you believe that deeply in yourself, the better. And with that, we're going to wrap another episode of Mapping the College Audition, produced by Meghan Cordier and Kelly Prendergast, with social media work by Jordan Rice. You can follow us at Mapping the College Audition on Instagram, subscribe where you listen to podcasts, check us out visually on YouTube and Spotify if you're feeling crazy. I do think I look handsome in this episode, if I do say so myself. Not right now in this video that you're watching, but in the episode itself, there's like a swoop to my hair that I'm really into. And if you agree, you can write us a rating and review wherever you listen. Comment on the video, whatever you got to do. And as always, check us out at MTCA.com for more information on how we can help you with your individual college process. To my young artists out there mapping their journeys, please trust that you're enough for the right program exactly as you are right now. Now keep striving and believe in yourself. Catch you next week.